Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Red Raider Athletics Director Kirby Hocutt decides he's going to stay a little longer in West Texas. We'll talk a new extension. We'll also discuss a starting quarterback for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. Tyler Shough announced as the man with the plan. But we'll also take a look at the five guys tasked with keeping Tyler Shough healthy in 2022. We'll discuss an offensive line that is looking to take a step forward this season. And also, well, how about the season? A whale of a non-conference schedule awaiting the Red Raiders, beginning with Murray State coming up on September 3rd. We'll discuss some of the challenges waiting ahead for the Red Raiders, all coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right.
Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech, your team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one daily podcast network in the universe. I'm Casey Cowan. To my left, the only Chris Level. And this is the first time around, Chris, for you and I as a part of the Locked On Network. This show has existed prior, but we're taking the reins. And to say that we're excited to get going here would be the understatement of the century. We've been discussing this for quite some time now, and I know you're feeling the same way I am. Glad to finally be here.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Chris Level. I believe three things. Okay. I believe that I'll never look at a cactus the same way again. Okay. After this summer. So that's one. I also believe that 50 burger, which I think you can see right there. There's no better team motto than that right there. Yes. And I also believe that Stevie Wonder can really see. So I mean, caught that mic stand. I'm just saying. Right. So anyway, all right. But no, I'm excited to be here, man. Looking forward to working with you. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you and I have technically worked together for over a decade, covering Texas Tech sports here in Lubbock, but we never actually had the pleasure of occupying the same airtime in our previous broadcasting excursions. So I'm glad to be finally sharing a show with you, and glad to be talking about an athletics department and specifically a football program here as we're wrapping up the month of August that is surrounded by enthusiasm right now. There's really no other way to describe what's happening, not only with Joey McGuire's football program, but with the man I've mentioned already, Kirby Hocutt's athletics department, really at large, man. It's a fun time to be a Red Raider right now.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that there's a new era beginning. I mean, when you look at this football team right now, they've had 3 head coaches in the last, calendar year in the last 12 months. But the athletic director is here, going to be here for a long time. You've got a new head coach that I think everybody hopes will be here for a long, long time. And that's the sport that needs to get fixed. That's the sport that needs to get some traction and kind of get going here. And we all understand that as you've been trying to figure out what is wrong with it. You've thrown a lot of money at it. But there's a lot of good things happening, obviously, with basketball and baseball and track and soccer and golf. I mean, there's so many of the programs are doing well. We've got to get football going, and I know that everybody hopes Joey McGuire will be that guy.
Well, and you're touching on a lot of the things there that have led to Kirby Hocutt, Red Raider Athletics Director, now being extended through the year 2030. Got some news last week into the weekend that Kirby Hocutt would be hanging around, contract through 2027 already, but going to take him through 2030. I think a little over $1.8 million is what it'll average out to over the life of the contract. And as you were just kind of running down the list there, the list of success amongst some of those non-revenue sports or some of those sports who don't quite get as much attention has been there for quite some time, and it has been extended. When you're talking about Tom Stone's soccer program, you're talking about Wes Kitley's track and field programs, you're talking about either the men's or women's golf programs, tennis programs that have had success. And you know that there's a lot of value there, Chris, and in large part does reflect a job done well by leadership within the athletics department. But the sports I didn't mention are the sports that get the majority of the eyeballs. And that's when you're talking about men's and women's basketball. You're talking about Tim Tadlock's baseball program, and the big daddy that runs it all is Joey McGuire's football program. And I think all Texas Tech fans kind of have that feeling of understanding that you've been a very competitive and oftentimes successful athletics department in so many areas, but we're working on more than a decade now that the football program has just been an absolute dud. And that's not something that any athletics department can really survive for long and have a fan base that's engaged and feeling excited about the possibilities. So once again, we're talking about a new head coach, and we'll get more specifically to what's going on with Red Raider football here in just a bit. We're talking about a new head coach who's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders to kind of reach that standard that was set once upon a time to be in the postseason and competing for some things in the conference, maybe a couple times every few years. But all of those things outside of the football program, for the most part, have been very, very successful. And that, in large part, I think, is why Kirby Hocutt is thought highly of by those that he works for, and why we saw an extension for him to keep him here through 2030.
It's fair to wonder about the timing of everything and why you got this extension now. And I think that you had some USA Today stuff and all those things kind of popping up out there and all that. Because there was people going, how, I think there was an article saying, how could he survive this and that? I think Lawrence Skuvenick obviously trusts Kirby and has a tremendous relationship with him. You mentioned all the programs that are successful. Here's what I wonder. Here's the conspiracy theorist in me. I wonder if Auburn was sniffing around at all. Because Auburn just let go of or kind of moved on that Brian Harsin situation, and Auburn is a big, giant, huge mess. Nobody's going to win off of that deal, and their athletic director just kind of faded away in the last days. And so it makes you just wonder based on the timing. But essentially, this was you mentioned the extension, not a new contract, although I guess you could say they tore up the old one and started a new one, whatever. But it's essentially 3 years tacked on to the existing contract that he had. But he's extremely well paid. And you're right. I think the fan base has been very patient, with everything in football because everything else has been so successful.
Right. You don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I mean,
no.
You kind of feel like, well, I just think if you've had any frustration with Kirby Hocutt and you're a fair-minded Tech fan, and fan is short for fanatic, so that's no requirement to be fair-minded if you want to be a fan. But if you are, you have to realize, well, there are more boxes than not that are checked whenever it comes to athletics programs currently on campus that are having success. So it has to mean something. But everybody knows, and certainly Kirby Hocutt is chief among those who know, you've got to, with your most visible program, that being football, you've got to find a way to compete, and you've got to find a way to be relevant. I mean, it's just plain and simply what drives the bus. Chris, I think I'm trying to remember the last time I saw these numbers. I think there are 6 or fewer athletics departments in the country among Power 5 athletics departments whose chief revenue generator is not the football program. There are a few men's basketball programs out there who fit that bill, but not many. So whether we're just talking economics, we're talking about the financial status of the athletics department, or just the fact that we're in the freaking great state of Texas and people want to compete in the fall on the football field, you got to get it going. And I know that a lot of high hopes right now are surrounding Joey McGuire's ability to do just that, right?
Yeah, and I think you bring up the point that, I don't know what the exact number is, but you're talking like 80, high 80s, or maybe even 90% of the overall budget comes from football program. You're in the midst of realignment still, and that's just going to be an issue that just hangs out there until it doesn't. Kirby being here long term gives you stability there. I think he's been on so many of these committees that the Big 12 has put together. And I do think there was some question of whether he could potentially be the next commissioner. That was a real thing. Yep. And Brett Yormark got that job. But I think, just having some stability and all those things. But, yeah, just a realignment piece. But, yeah, to your point, I mean, the football part, I mean, nobody's donating $200 million to another program to build this unbelievable facility like they just did with with football. That's just the reality. That's what moves the needle. That's realignment is 100% based on football and viewers and all those things. So, but I'm glad to see Kirby be here for the long term. He's always been great to work with, and I think that coaches like working for him and all that stuff. But I was not expecting that news though the other day. The timing was like, oh, okay, because he had 4 years left on his contract.
I wanted to ask you if you were surprised, and I'm curious if you were surprised more so by the timing. Were you surprised that there was going to be this early of an agreement by either party, Kirby Hocutt or Texas Tech? Because like you mentioned, I mean, you always have to think about Kirby Hocutt with any type of position of leadership that might come open in so many facets, whether you're talking commissioner, another athletics director, a college football playoff executive. He's served, in so many capacities, and I think is well thought of in so many circles. You always kind of wonder what's the next opportunity or what does he want it to be? So maybe timing aside, were you just surprised that this kind of thing was in the works or agreeable to both parties right now?
Yeah, well, I think that we go from it was either related to, hey, let's show support to our guy, even though some people are writing some things and questioning him, or really there was something like Auburn out there that they came knocking, and it's like, okay, or there's some of truth to one of those, maybe one or the other, maybe both. But I mean, make no mistake, it doesn't matter what Kirby goes and does. I mean, he's going to have a hard time making as much money doing that he is here as the athletic director. I don't know what your mark is slated to make, but my point of saying that is he's extremely well compensated here. And
top three, top five nationally.
He's top 10, I think.
Okay.
I mean, and Tadlock is top, or near the top. I mean, I think Coach Kitley's like top 15 paid. I don't know, Mark Adams is not anymore. Joey McGuire's not going to be anymore. But there's a few of these. I mean, Greg Sands is, I think up there and just as far as their sport. But Kirby certainly is, I think. Yeah,
well,
top 10.
You saw the measure of the potential investment to a men's basketball head coach with the prior guy. Mm-hmm. Mark Adams has got some skins to hang on the wall, but he'll have that opportunity to get there if he hangs those skins on the wall in the same kind of way. So either way, there's continued resource being invested in a way that really hasn't ever been. It's kind of a different fiscal era for Texas.
I agree. I just know this. Sometimes it's like you don't have the money to do a lot of stuff around here, but it seems like if they ever need the money to get something done, it happens. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like Wes Welker fast, football fast. Not really fast, not winning many races yet. Nobody can catch him. Yeah.
Well, congratulations to Kirby Hocutt.
Yeah,
certainly as a Tech fan, I think I'll mark this among good news that we've got the extension in place through 2030. And man, you got a disciple of Bill Snyder, and that's never something I want to let go of very quickly. When you're talking about his days at Kansas State, I've asked Kirby a few times just in passing about the zen of Bill Snyder, a guy I respect as much as anyone that's ever come through the sport or come through college athletics. So something to not forget there also. You mentioned resource, and we're talking about dollars being invested. This is not new news. Obviously, you've probably seen, if you're a Tech fan by now, the news regarding the south end zone renovation. But here recently, we did see a few more renderings released as far as what it was going to look like, Chris. And I know people are now chomping or champing or whatever a horse would do in that situation at the bit to get to this after 2022. As Joey McGuire said, you're going to beat Oklahoma, and then we're going to knock that building down, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen quick, and it's going to be a mess, I mean, for a bit. Short-term pain, long-term gain type scenario. I think they had talked about, let's do these projects in phases. I think at the end of the day, they've basically just decided we're going to do the best we can and just work on it all at once. And but it's going to be massive in scope, massive, I think, what it means in recruiting. You're just going to have to deal with some issues in the meantime during the off season. And I guess next football season will be a bit tricky, but we'll worry about that when we get there. But it's unbelievable. I mean, $200 million is, I mean, and I don't know what the final price tag, I'm throwing that around. Maybe it's slightly more than that, but there's so many things you don't even think about, electrical and plumbing that's out of sight based on that you can't control based on your location and trying to retrofit things or trying to tear stuff down, whatever. But it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, and what Tech talks to you about is the proximity of just a general flow of a football player. Everything is there. Where they eat, where they study, where they practice, where they play. And I think that's one thing that they really have said no other players ultimately have it like this, to where it's just right there in one giant kind of clump of continuous facility, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it looks special, man. That indoor was huge, and it's meant so much, but the other stuff is just going to be absolutely, and Skybridge,
baby. I'm ready for that Skybridge life.
That's right. Maybe you and I can get we can gritty down it or something. Yeah. Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting me to say that.
I didn't have that on my Locked On Texas Tech bingo card for.
That's right. I bet you didn't.
Together, gritty, and I'm assuming you're taking your gritties with cheese and onions, as I would as well.
Yes,
Chris, I did see that Joey McGuire said he's bringing back the Raider Walk, which is something that Tommy Tuberville brought about. I don't know if Tech had ever done it before, but you've seen it elsewhere where the team is going to walk to the stadium, walk wherever, and you get surrounded by fans. I thought the way that Tommy Tuberville did it was just about the way you'd expect Tommy Tuberville to manage something like an idiot. I don't know if you remember, but the team bus would drive down the street to the baseball field away from the stadium, and then get off of the bus, and then they'd walk down the street back to the stadium. And I had, from a radio broadcast perch there, just a great view to the acid entity that I thought was playing out there before. I never got it, but what I'm seeing here, and it made me think of it because of the south end zone, because you're going to have this chance with the newly renovated south end zone setup to have a really awesome walk pregame from the football training facility to the stadium. It looks like Joey McGuire is going to institute something similar that's going to be a little bit more common sense, I think, in that they're going to come somewhere from that present team facility over to the stadium. You're not going to have to walk down the street or ride a bus to then walk back to your own facility. I always figured that's why we were getting smacked around in the first quarter under Tuberville. The team's damn legs were gone from the quarter-mile walk down the drive of champions. So I'm going to consider this one improvement already for Coach McGuire, man. Raider Walk is back, baby.
Yeah. I remember those buses. I'm like, man, they're way off yonder. Yeah, way off yonder. It's a long walk.
We were gassed at the national anthem.
Yeah, but I know it seems like that McGuire, any button that he pushes right now, he can do no wrong. I think this is part of him metaphorically making sure that his program reaches out and touches everybody, and it's they want to be like that kind of program to where you are a part of it, and we need everybody. And it's just part of his kind of community fan engagement that I think that they were really trying to push this. But yeah, you're right. They'll come up on, was it Drive of Champions? Is that right? I think that's the exact street. And it won't be a long walk, but they'll kind of come up with the band and all that stuff and then kind of walk in down the tunnel by the locker room. But just a chance for fans to kind of be part of the pomp and circumstance of a college football Saturday, which is they're the best, man.
It's the
absolute best.
And if you've never, I used to live on the other side of 19th Street in the Tech Terrace neighborhood. If you ever had the chance to just be walking through campus on game day and catch that band flow across campus to the stadium, that's always a good time. If you haven't done that, I would encourage you to check that out if you are rolling around campus. Pre-game coming up, well, this Saturday, because it's already upon us. We'll get to the schedule coming up in just a bit. And also directly ahead, we want to get to Tyler Shough, announced as Texas Tech's starting quarterback. We'll discuss number 12 in year number 2 for the Red Raiders. Of course, after a limited year number 1, only saw him in 4 games. We'll talk about Tyler Shough and also who the hell's going to keep him healthy in 2022. We've seen some things revealed as far as starters along the offensive line, and we'll help clear up that picture coming up in just a bit. Football fans, football season is here, and regardless of where you are cranking it up on these college football weekends, want to make sure you are staying safe out there. And if you think there's no harm in driving stoned, think again. Marijuana will alter your driving, and not only alter your driving, but put those in danger around you. So make sure you are staying safe on a college football weekend coming up. If you think there's no harm in it, think again. If you've been using marijuana in any form, don't get behind the wheel unless it's like a wheel of cheese. If you feel different, you're going to drive different. And if you drive high, you're getting a DUI or worse. And that's one easy way to ruin a college football Saturday. Stay safe, Red Raiders. Locked On Texas Tech, your team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Casey Cowan with Chris Level. Great to be back with you as we are gearing up for Red Raider football coming up this weekend, as Texas Tech will be opening things up from Jones Stadium, hooking up with Murray State. We'll get to Murray State and more. The rest of the non-conference schedule, quite a challenge for the Red Raiders. You've got 2 top 25 opponents on the other side of the opener. We'll get to that coming up before we're done here today. But first, wanted to talk Tyler Shough as QB1. Chris, we saw this decision made last year as Tyler got the opportunity to lead the Red Raiders, and we saw some good stuff from him early on in the year, but unfortunately was limited by an injury. And I know he's got to be as anxious as anyone to get back on the field here and make good of an opportunity in West Texas.
Yeah, and he was always the favorite, I think, Casey, that was going to win this job. I think that the favorite of all the different scenarios that would have been possible for quarterback for Texas Tech this year, once you realize that they were all going to stay here and nobody was going to enter the portal and all that stuff, and everybody's healthy, which they are, the favorite scenario was always going to be Shough starting and Donovan Smith backing him up and playing some. And I think that's what you're going to see. But I just think Tyler is he's the most polished. He's the most steady. He's the most consistent. I mean, because there are things that Donovan can do that Tyler can't. There are things that Barron can do that maybe the other two guys can't. But I don't think any of them are as just consistent and have the big arm and avoid turnover. I mean, all those kinds of things that you're looking for that compared to what Tyler does. Because I think that, and he's got wheels. I mean, he can absolutely use those legs and run and make plays. And Joey and Zach Kitley, they've talked about that. They'll use that. They're not going to put any of these kids in bubble wrap and try to protect them by not letting them run because of that depth that we've talked about. And I think that the quarterback race went on a lot longer than everybody would have thought, simply because of Barron and Donovan. But it was always not his job to lose it, but he was always kind of in that seat, and he needed to be knocked out. And I just don't know if either one of those guys could do it, although you're in good hands. I mean, Barron and Donovan are going to be really, really good around here. And I think that they can all three win Big 12 games, in my opinion. I mean, this season, I'm not saying that they would be able to do that consistently, but any of them playing or starting this year, you're going to be just fine. And you're going to have to deal with some of that inexperience in Barron's case. But yeah, this is Tyler's job, and I can't wait to see what it looks like. Hopefully, if he stays healthy all year, because it's been a while since you've had a guy that's actually been able to stay healthy and be consistent all season long. A
guy not named Patrick Mahomes, especially. I mean, are we going to Seth Dagey? Who's the last guy that was?
Yeah, Pat Mahomes he played most of the 1 year, but he was injured. Yeah, injured. Nick Simonek maybe did, but yeah, you may be going back to Seth Dagey. You're right. It's just been a while where we've had, and I think that's why, to me, the game's different. You look at the Big 12 last year, everybody, I think, in the league had a guy go down, whether injury or, okay, he's not playing well enough, we're going to make a switch. Yeah. So everybody played more than one quarterback last year. It's funny you mentioned Seth Dagey, because Jarrett Dagey may be the only one that started every one of his team's games, and even he kind of got platooned a bit with the runner up there, the kid that was backing him up, and it was enough for Jarrett to kind of get forced out now that they've got JT Daniels up there. But yeah, to come full circle, Donovan and Barron are probably going to have a role at some point this year if you go with the odds. But I hope we see a lot of Tyler Shough playing good football all season long.
No question about it. And this is where I'd love for the audience to lean in and listen closely for a plug. BlackLabelRadio.com, another podcast I do every Friday. Black Label Radio, search for it anywhere you get your podcast. Had an opportunity to have a great conversation with Tyler Shough on the last episode last week, Chris, after he was announced as the starting quarterback. And one of the things that I asked him about was the feeling this offseason of seeing the team end on such a high, beating Mike Leach, someone your fan base cared about, and just winning a bowl game in general, how that sets you up for such a feeling good kind of offseason versus what he had to be feeling individually. And I know that he's enough of a good teammate and selfless enough to still easily have been able to enjoy his teammates' accomplishments. But he also talked about in our conversation with him kind of the frustration of knowing that obviously there's a lot of hard work for him lying ahead individually this summer and this offseason. I think he's the kind of case that a lot of Tech fans will find easy to root for. We want to see him as an individual have success. Obviously, we want him to be successful because that means that Tech will have a chance to be successful. But I just find him to be a guy that's really easy to root for. And I think that personally, there was quite a challenge for him, right? Because your teammates were having a celebratory offseason, and you got a little of that, but you're also watching it in the windbreaker, and that's just a different feeling than obviously being on the field.
Yeah, and I think because that's the thing is Donovan Smith he was a Liberty Bowl MVP.
Yeah,
I mean he's and
he said he can
win
win Big 12 games, and it's not just a prediction or
he's
some
done
type of
it.
fantasy. We've seen him do it. Yeah,
I tell you what the team thinks about those two kids is they're both captains. I mean, what is there another team in the country that's got two kids that are playing quarterback that are both captains? I'd venture a guess it is. I mean, it's a kind of a unicorn scenario right there. Yeah. It's not something you would see, but I think it says a lot about who Donovan is, but also says a lot about who Tyler is too, because he didn't play, past the third or fourth game last year, and then and people know real recognize real, as they say. So those kids know. I mean, they know how much he's up there in that building and how much he studies and cares about it and wants to be really good and all that stuff. But I think the flip side is true too, in that people know that Donovan's got some things to him that he can do that nobody else can. And so you try to mesh that, because that's what I'm interested in. It sounds great that you're going to play two guys, and Sonny Cummey did some of that last year. But when it's, I don't know, 3rd and 8 with 8 minutes to go against Houston, and it's 24-24, you're really pulling Tyler Shough out of the game put in. Well, you know what I'm saying?
Whoever the starter is.
Yeah. It's just tricky to try to work some of that stuff. But I don't know. That's what fun. I think Zach views this as a positive, not as some sort of negative, like trying to force feed anything. It's no. These are the skill sets we're going to use to try to win football games, and I'll figure it out when we get there. But it should be fun.
I got to be honest with you. When people talk about playing two quarterbacks and even like, in this formation and that formation, it's in one ear and out the other to me, because I hope that's not actually the case. I'm a big believer in if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. And I think sometimes, I know there will be some special packages here or there, but I think sometimes at this point in the year, when you hear coaches say, all right, he's our starter, but we're going to do this with the others, it's almost just kind of a gentle way of massaging the conversation. Nothing wrong with it, but I think that's a great kind of picture you paint there. Hell no, I don't want there to be some rotational thing or in crunch time thinking about a different option. It's not a wide receiver, it's not a running back or a defensive lineman. There's something different about that position. And if the guy's healthy, I want there to be clearly a guy that is the one, I just think you find in healthy football teams, aside from the Tim Tebow, Chris Leak combination once upon a time, aside from that one time, I don't remember many times where you've switched it up very much and had a lot of success. I know we'll see some special things, but if Shough's the guy with the opportunity and he's healthy, then I want the opportunities to all be Tyler Shough's. And clearly there are guys in front of him that are going to have a lot to say about whether or not he's healthy. And, man, the other day I was putting together a ranking as it relates to preseason confidence in positional groups. And it hurt me so much to put the Texas Tech offensive line last on my list. And it's mostly based, Chris, in the fact that you haven't had a very good decade prior to this one. Your offensive line has not been very good for a long time. and you are in a position now to really only be talking about potential heading into this season. Maybe they'll make good on it, but you lost something like 115 combined career starts from a year ago, not all in Tech uniforms with Josh Berger and TJ Stormont, but Dawson Deaton, the other guy there, making up that number. So you got a lot of things ahead of you that resemble a casting call. Help wanted signs are hung on the window for Stephen Hamby in year one. I know a Red Raider fan favorite as a former offensive lineman. He's got a huge job for him. And there's already been some interesting twists and turns within that storyline, hadn't there, this offseason when you talk about Cole Spencer and some of these guys you're excited to get but aren't off the injury list yet.
Well, I think with their actions, they told you as a staff what the issues were with this team as they saw it when the offseason began, because they start throwing, we'll phrase scholarships as assets here, but they started throwing assets at that position group and brought in, you bring in one from USC and Oklahoma State, Western Kentucky. You mentioned Cole Spencer from New Mexico and Cade Briggs, all that stuff. Anyway, there's 5 or 6 additions to that group. And I think it's fair to say this. That may be the biggest question mark on the team, but if they give you any kind of answer, the payoff could be really fun.
True.
The payoff could be just fine, because they've got depth, they've got experience, and you point to some guys that are no longer here. But even in the year before last, you had Jack Anderson. The year before that, you had Terrence Steele. I mean, these guys are all getting cups of coffee in the NFL, if not still there. And so I'm as curious as anybody. I think that you'll miss Cole Spencer some, if not the entire season. At the beginning of the season, you hear Joey McGuire talking about, hey, man, August 31st, we'll kind of make a decision there on what we're going to do with him.
I'm sorry, did you say entire season?
Well, I mean, they've got a decision to make with him, because I think he's going to miss some time, and I think they're trying to figure out, is there enough left in the season based on when he could, I don't know.
Eligibility wise?
Well, or just health wise, or whatever the situation is with him.
Well, I mean, what's the crossover as far as, I mean, does he have a chance to get?
He's an older kid, and I don't think, because he's a senior, I think, but I don't think he has a true redshirt year left.
I see.
In other words, what you can check on is, okay, if there's going to be some issue where he's going to miss some time, and he can still play in those final 4 games per se. Yeah. Do we go ahead and try to do that, and then we can still get him back next year if he's going to miss enough time or whatever? So, but I think there were people that will tell you he's the coming in anyway. He's the best offensive lineman that you had, and I know Hamby and Kitley knew exactly what they had when they got him. So. Anyway, if he does miss some time this year, or miss the season, or miss portion of the season, whatever it is, the payoff would be you'll get him next year, I think is the thought. That you're just kind of trading one year for the other. If there's some time missed, but it does create some scenarios for this group this year, because if he's not around, he can't provide an answer for you. But you have a kid like Dennis Wilburn, who had come in here and has won the center job, it appears. You have a kid named Landon Peterson, and is from the Middle Odessa area, that I think has had a great camp and a great summer and everything like that. I think he's kind of worked his way in. And then you've got Caleb Rogers and Weston Wright. The one that I'm fascinated by was Monroe Mills. He's the sophomore that came in from Oklahoma State, and I didn't know. He missed all the spring. I think he didn't show up here until summertime. We just don't know a lot about him, but he's playing right tackle, and he's 6'6", 300 pounds, and he's a sophomore. So if he's an answer, he's gonna play a lot of football around here for you. But Cade Briggs, Jacoby Jackson, Ethan Card, who was the guy that everybody knew about, Michael Shanahan.
Let me stop you right there for a second. Ethan Card. It feels like the next step has never really been taken, because I always feel like prior to the year, his name is in that mix to grab one of those spots, but I'm seeing again this year names in front of him on the depth chart. Does he still have a chance, or do you think the book has kind of been written? Or
and he's maybe, I think he's just a depth piece is the best way to say it. He's played football here and elsewhere, obviously, so he's got some experience. I just don't know if he's top end enough to where he's somebody that you want to lean on as a starter, but he's a depth piece. He's big and he's a good teammate and all the things you're looking for. Doesn't cause any problems. But yeah, I just don't know. I mean, for some of these new kids to come in and beat him out,
right?
And beat some of these other kids out too. That's why if Ethan Card was. And some of these other kids were better. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I know they needed numbers too, but if they were better, they wouldn't have maybe taken as many transfer offensive linemen, so.
Well, tell me about Jacoby Jackson on the other end of the experience scale, because I'm hearing a lot of things about him turning heads in camp.
Yeah, I think he's got a chance to potentially be a starter sooner than later. Maybe, because the thing about this group, and it goes really with the whole team, how different does the team look in a variety of ways? And it will be October 1 versus September 1, because things change. Kids kind of emerge, or they, are like, man, he had a good camp and he just hadn't played very well, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like, here's your basketball analogy. Remember how Bryson Williams' November and December were last year compared to his January, February, and March? They couldn't have been any further apart for the most part. And I think that offensive line is a group that it could look very different when you start conference play and all that than it does versus Murray State. And so I'm kind of fascinated to see that.
If as a group they want to follow the trajectory of Bryson Williams, Texas Tech is winning 8 or 9 games probably this year. I mean, that would be
and fantastic. You're probably right. You're probably right. I agree. I absolutely agree.
Landon Peterson's an interesting guy because he obviously saw some time last year kind of as that sixth man or a rotational piece. Do you think you see his trajectory really transitioning into reliable starter? Does he have that kind of makeup?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a high-end prospect. I think he's played in 17 games. I believe is right. He started 1. He's from that, like I said, he's a West Texas kid. And he missed some time in camp because of injury. And so you kind of wondered, okay, did his chance pass him by? But he kind of, I guess whatever time he missed, he came back and I think is going to end up winning the job at that right guard spot. But I think that he could be a long-term answer for you at that spot. And what's fun about that is he could, he's a junior. And what's tricky when you start talking about these guys' eligibility, I can't remember who's got a COVID year and who. Yeah. And so maybe he's got 3 years left. I mean, Monroe Mills may have 4 years left as he's listed as a sophomore. I don't know, but
maybe I've got 4 years left. We don't know. I totally agree. The super seniors and all the extra, it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah. So, but I think, and obviously with Weston Wright and Caleb Rogers, I think that, going left is the strength of your offensive line, and Dennis Wilburn is a fascinating kid because he was really the starting center all spring. And I think a lot of it had to do with other guys missing or not being here yet. And he's just really done nothing to lose that spot at all. And he's a big kid.
Is he the Hutchinson?
Yes.
Walk-on?
But he was a junior college All-American, and he's every bit of 320, and it's a good 320. And if he's not on scholarship yet, he will be within hours or a few months, that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? It'll be one of those reveals.
What's the story with the walk-on? I mean, how was this a Wilburn motivated, like, I'm going to make it happen deal, or did Texas Tech try to get him in this position, see if it worked out, or –
there was a connection there, and I'm trying to remember what the connection was on kind of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was Hamby related or if it was Zach Kitley and like Western Kentucky type stuff, or if it was something he was already connected to Tech prior or the previous step. I can't remember. Anyways, but I think it was like, hey man, come in and compete. We'll see where it goes. Well, that's what he's done. I mean, so that. I think so. I really think that'll be your guy, and I think he's really solid. I think that Briggs had a chance to win that job. I just think with Cade Briggs, he's probably more of a natural fit at guard because I think that when you start seeing some of the massive DTs that you see in this league that Baylor and OU throw at you, I don't know if that's Cade Briggs' skill set to be able to handle that mass up front, and I think Dennis Wilburn can do that.
Well, and that spot is replacing your best offensive lineman. I think I'm right in saying that, and Dawson Deaton from a year ago. So obviously you really had that position shorn up and as one of your foundational pieces, not only on the offense, but on the roster. So those are Those are big shoes to fill. Before we move on, though, you mentioned it there. Left side of the offensive line, Caleb Rogers at left tackle, Weston Wright at left guard. Almost 50 starts, I think, between the two. I saw that Rogers had the second most offensive snaps last year. Wright had the third most offensive snaps last year. So you've got some experience. And, Chris, you'd love to have All-Americans at all 5 spots, every year. But I really like the idea also of if you can solidify one side, then do it. And I kind of wonder if that's why Weston Wright was the guy that's not at the right guard and at the left guard spot, or maybe how you interpret that, because it does kind of seem like to me between Rogers and Wright, there may be a side of the line that you can depend on in some of these third and short or red zone or whatever kind of situations. Is that why you think Wright ended up on that side?
Good question. I mean, the conspiracy theorist in me would say I think you're onto something. If you want to lean on maybe the familiarity there of teammates and played together before, that may be right. Weston Wright is just one of those guys. It's just, I don't know if he's an NFL guy or like a play on Sunday type guy, but he's just really solid. He's never going to be, the guy that sticks out for the wrong reasons, but he may also not be a non-conference, an all-conference guy either. But because Caleb Rogers, I think he's got a chance to be, if he'll take the next step, and he's very animated too.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys, he's very loud and boisterous and excitable, which you got to watch that sometimes. You got to be careful with that, not picking up any of those penalties and things like that. But yeah, no. So I'm fascinated to see this group starting Saturday for sure.
Well, left tackle spot is as important on just about any football team as any other. So obviously Caleb Rogers has got big opportunity and big responsibility on his hands, because we would like to keep Tyler Shough upright, healthy, maybe even the quarterback into a 5th game. I am dreaming big dreams in 2022, but I'd love to see him be able to stick it out and really see what he can do, because we know that Tyler is a talented kid, Chris, and I know that he's got his sights set on the National Football League, and there were NFL eyes on him coming into last year. Obviously, you take a hit when you take an injury like that, but I'm excited to see the kid play if we can keep him on the field and keep him healthy, because I think he may be one of the best in the Big 12 if he has that chance.
Ditto. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, me dose, Yeah.
And Tyler did tell us, I'd be remiss if I didn't plug this also. Tyler said that Dennis the Menace Wilburn has got bars, that he's in the booth. So
okay.
I don't know where to check that out just yet, but maybe look him up, Dennis the Menace. They're telling me that he's stepping in the booth and taking it on the mic.
And if you've got your quarterback's endorsement as a center, that's all you need.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's all you need, because if you win him over, you're golden if you're Dennis.
That's a close-knit bond. Can't wait to see them for the first time rolling it out. Coming up this Saturday as Texas Tech is hooking up with Murray State, and coming up in just a moment, we're talking Murray State, and we're talking Red Raider non-conference schedule as 2 top 25 opponents loom large on the other side of week 1. We'll get to that next on Locked On Texas Tech. Alan, your team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check us out on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts for free. No paywall. We're out there wide open and loving every minute of it, to quote the great Cosmo Kramer. So subscribe today, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. Excited to be with you each weekday at 7 a.m. You can find it right there. Make it your first listen when your feet hit the floor before you're out the door. You've already got Locked On Texas Tech at your fingertips. And at our fingertips, Chris, it is Texas Tech football season coming up this weekend, Saturday, September 3rd. The Red Raiders and Murray State, as Joey McGuire opens up year 1 at the helm of Texas Tech football and opens up a schedule that at large is going to be very, very difficult, obviously, when you get into the Big 12. But atypically, in some seasons, you've got a non-conference schedule that is really packing a punch. You got Murray State, and then you've got 2 top 25 opponents, at least as far as preseason rankings are concerned, on the other side of that, with Houston coming to town and then a trip to take on number 13, North Carolina State. Why did NC State pick this year? I hadn't seen NC State in the top 25 in 25 years, it seems like, and we get them on a schedule, and all of a sudden I'm having nightmares of T.A. McClendon once upon a time at the Jones. Man, what a schedule.
Yeah, if I'm Joey McGuire, I'm asking the same thing. I'm like, oh, man, what a schedule. And I'm going, what in the world are we doing here? Yeah, that's right. Because the last time you saw NC State, they had a really good quarterback in Phillip Rivers, and they've also got the preseason ACC Player of the Year. Their quarterback is, and then Houston, they'll be in a real good mood after that was the only loss they suffered last year was to you, and they've got a whole bunch of folks back, and including quarterback Clayton Tune. And so that is really going to determine how this thing is going to go rather quickly, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think I hope not, but one of the realistic scenarios is you could start the season out 1-2, and that's not you won't have lost to a bad team, because I think that games 2 and 3 will be tougher than game 4. And that's, I do think that. And that's that fourth game is when you host Texas.
Wait,
I just think
Houston or NC State even have a mantra, much less all gas, no brakes? Don't be so fast to say that, because Texas has a mantra. You may be right, but I'm so traumatized by life as a Red Raider fan.
No, I hear you.
Series. I don't know if I go that far, but you may be right.
And it's just, I think talent-wise, maybe on paper, I don't know. But, I think that you're right. I mean, the history doesn't bode well for you than that series for sure. But bottom line is the Houston game and everything last year, because I think if you didn't get it, you just, there was no way out. It still ended up there was a change made. But this year, there won't be anything like that. However, that Houston game will determine kind of which way the season's going to go, and if you can really get to a bowl game and make some noise, or because I don't know, and not that I would rule it out, but if you lose to Houston, odds are it's going to be really tough to go to NC State and win a game at nighttime against the top 15 NC State team. Not saying you can't, but that's where it starts to get scary a bit, I guess. Whereas if you win the Houston game, okay, look out. Now you've got some momentum. You've got it in your back pocket. Now, you're going to at least go into conference play at 2-1 at the worst if you can beat the Cougs. So, and I don't want to just gloss over Murray State either, because the point needs to be made in the portal era.
Gloss them.
But in the portal era, all of those teams have been able to add age and experience, and they've got an Ohio State kid on their team. I mean, so it's not. They're not going to be trotting out, 25 true freshmen or anything, because they couldn't go, because they've taken advantage of the portal too. But you're right. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. Although, would you beat SFA last year by, what was it, less than 10 points? Houston Baptist the year before. So some of these games have been kind of dicey. But you're right. I'd like to think that you'll have no problem.
The Houston Baptist experience was so bad that we just had to bring Zach Kittley. That's not the last time I'm going to do that, I'm sure. But we just said, come bring it on down.
Do I hear you saying Colby Carthel will be on our sideline soon?
I'm wondering why Carthel wasn't added actually this offseason in some capacity. You're touching on there. Just God, I hate these FCS matchups. There's seemingly nothing there for anyone, in my humble opinion. I mean, you get to this point in the year, it feels so good. You got out, in the morning and get a little chill in the air. The leaves are rustling. You might hear a marching band practicing in the distance. You're smelling it, tasting the air. You're pumped up for Texas Tech football. Let's get to the Jones. Let's go, to quote a local man, and all of a sudden it's
Murray State.
Murray State.
Do you know what their mascot is? Do you know what their mascot is?
I have no clue. Human. Is it
okay?
Human?
No, it's a jockey. I mean, they're the racers.
A pair of underwear?
Yeah.
Oh.
They're from Murray. They're located in Murray, Kentucky, and it's like they have a racehorse and a jockey on top with the school colors. And I don't know if they come running out and he's whipping that horse, or I don't know, but that's essentially the mascot.
Keep that jockey away from our horse.
no doubt. And I'm guessing they won't bring him, but the Murray State Racers.
Can we ever get rid of FCS games? I mean, really,
it makes you wonder.
Right in the center of my head, right here, Chris.
At some point in time, I wonder if there will be a problem with some of this with the realignment stuff and maybe beefed up conference schedules. And, you wonder if that'll even be an option. But it would – I mean, you say who gains anything? Well, Murray State, man, programs like that, if they don't have them, they're that's right.
And I don't care. Murray State alums in the audience looking for some mention of Murray State on a text show. You can mention it. I don't care.
I don't care.
Exist or not. I'm not against you. I don't want to see them rubbed out. But why do we have to subsidize your existence?
And you've never seen them. Yeah, you've never seen them on TV. You don't know. Yeah, DJ Williams is their quarterback, just so you know. I like that name. I think it sounds good. We'll see if he can play ball at all, but we got all week to talk about that.
It drives me crazy, man. Every Tech fan going through the gate at the Jones on Saturday should get a free six-pack of your chosen flavor. I mean, the ticket takers should wear ski masks because it's just highway robbery. I hate it with the fire of 1,000 suns. And this is the opening of the best regular season in the history of sports, right? Remember, that's why we couldn't have an extended playoff. Well, because it's the best regular season ever, except for these weekends or November in the SEC whenever Alabama's picking on University of the Panama Canal or whatever. I mean.
And the rest of the Big 12 – Central Michigan, Tennessee Tech, Southeast Missouri State, UTEP, South Dakota, Albany, Louisiana Monroe, like West Virginia and Pitt, that's a legit game. Okay, the backyard brawl.
Should have never
left. That's the backyard brawl. Yep. And then Colorado is hosting TCU. That's a fun game too. Yeah, but other than that, everybody's got something similar to this.
I won't let you look down though. Who'd you say? Central Michigan, right? On the Chippewas?
There you go. At Oklahoma State, yes.
Nobody looks down on the Chippewas. Fire up, Chips! I just watched them play in a bowl game one time, and they had fire up Chips on the back of their helmet, and I just thought, how much fun would that be to yell that 1,000 times at a football game? Fire up, Chips!
And is that the team that went into Stillwater and won a couple years ago?
I think that's right.
They might have done that. Yeah, like what are they doing coming back?
So even if it's not right, let's just assume it is. And we'll move on until someone corrects us on Tuesday's edition, I guess.
We'll go with it. Yes.
All right. Well, we do have to go in general as today's episode of Locked On Texas Tech comes to an end, but we've got plenty more to get into. We're just getting started, and we've got episodes coming your way. Each weekday will be posted at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, the Lord's time, for your listening pleasure. So check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there. Search for Locked On Texas Tech or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter at Locked On Tech. Chris, enjoyed it, man. Can't wait to get back to it with you tomorrow as we get closer to Red Raider football. We're actually going to see some football here pretty soon.
I know. Fun time of year, man. Games are finally here instead of all this portal and NIL stuff and all this business. But, man, keep hope alive, people. I appreciate you having me. Can't wait to do it again tomorrow.
Hell yeah. Talking season is almost over for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders, but never over for us. So we are back tomorrow on Locked On Texas Tech. Appreciate you for making it your first listen every day. And after Locked On Texas Tech, make Locked On Big 12 your second listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Our guy, Josh Neighbors, will give you the lay of the land all around the conference each weekday on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. We'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Texas Tech.